Hey everyone, welcome to this brand new episode of Phenoms. In today's episode, we're very lucky to have Justin, and he's actually from the startup named Callidus. And this is an amazing company. It's an AI API platform for legal tech. He's going to tell us a little bit more about what it is, but they've recently raised a $10 million round. So we're very lucky to have him here on this session to explore the journey behind this amazing startup. So, Justin, how do you feel about that recent round?
We're excited. To date, we've been very much on a shoestring kind of budget where we've needed to be very scrappy, make a lot of very interesting trade-offs that were tough, where you end up doing things where it's like you're violating all of the best practices, but somehow you're shipping stuff that's still high quality, but doing just enough to survive and make it on to the next step. And then we got a very sizable round relative to anything else we've had before. And now it's like, okay, how do we use these funds to really hit our vision, really blow up as a company, and really achieve success, and feel just amazing about the potential of where we're going to get to where we were. It was much more challenging, I think, than making use of these funds and then very effectively hitting the next stage.
No, I got so many questions, you have no idea.
That's awesome.
So, let's start with this one. Can you tell our viewers who were you before you even founded the company as maybe just a professional or just if you had other startups and all that?
Yeah. I think the most important pieces about my background would be I was an attorney by trade, ended up practicing for a bit, M&A and corporate restructuring, switched over, did a handful of things for AT&T across a bunch of different types of roles. That was actually pretty helpful because I was able to see pretty end to end across a full company in a variety of roles, whether it was marketing or finance or whatever. And then I led transformation for our legal department at AT&T and ran that with the deputy GC. That was really impactful. We saved a lot of money and were able to kind of rethink and be transformative for how legal services were delivered at the company. A lot of upside. We saw a lot of just great big rocks to go after, and then was leading a team that was responsible for GenAI and analytics. And so I was on the GenAI executive board at our subsidiary DirecTV. I was running an engineering and data science org, and we launched the first GenAI product at DirecTV. And that combination there made a lot of sense to me of legal plus GenAI. So like, just think about like legal is all text, right? And so you had this series where data science was really big for like say 2010 to 2020 or so. And everybody was very interested in that. In the finance world, that was extremely impactful. In the marketing world, is impactful with analytics and so forth. But legal was pretty immune to this big leap in technology until we had generative AI to be more text-based, and then it was extremely impacted by this new technology. And so I wanted to kind of use my legal background, use kind of the ability to look at an industry transformatively, and then pair it with this new technology that I was pretty obsessed about.
It's an amazing background to bring into this startup that you're running. When you said GC, I guess this was governance and compliance, right?
General counsel, sorry.
Okay, okay, got it. So it could be a bit confusing for the users
Sorry,
or
yeah.
the audiences that are watching it. Yeah, okay, thanks for pointing that out. And if we go even further back in time, like when you were 10 years old, can you describe like who was the young Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a curious person, always a competitive person, and someone that very nerdy and dorky in plenty of different ways. To where I had assumed that I wanted to be an attorney pretty early on, and pretty well stuck with that. And then once I actually practiced, I realized no, I'd probably be more interested in building something and being more part of the build part of a company than the legal part. But I still had that background, and it would still had a lot of interesting problem solving aspects to it. The other things that not just as a 10-year-old, but going a little bit older, I was very interested in AI quite early on. I think that I just saw the progress we were making, just intuitively seemed like it was something that could lead to where AI started becoming very powerful over time. And so I remember reading a Wait But Why article in like 2015 about the AI revolution and being like, yes, I've been saying this for like 15 years. This is like very much in line with like my worldview of what things
Wow.
are, what's going to happen. And then
And we're talking about the year 2000. You already had your own views. And in 2015, you saw that article and you already predicted everything like 15 years ago.
and I would say like my predictions were basic. I mean, they were
Mhm.
not to the level of sophistication that the author there had, but I definitely had a very similar worldview as that author and had it kind of from a very early stage. My perspective at the time was this would be like a 2060 type of thing or a 2050 type of thing. And then
It came
ChatGPT,
faster, right?
yeah, and then ChatGPT comes out in 2022, and I'm like, what is going on? How is this possible? I didn't believe it for quite some time. I the first day it came out, I was testing it heavily, and it was just one of those handful of moments where I was just like, okay, the world is absolutely going to change. This is such an impactful technology. And then 6 months later, they have GPT-4 came out and continued the ramp up in acceleration. So that part was really exciting to me.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And do you remember what was your first business? Like, did you do those, casual lemonade stands, the lawn mowing,
Uh, uh,
or not really?
I did a little bit of that. I did the lemonade stands. Yes, I think those tended to help. My dad ended up after a career in sales. He ended up opening some smoothie stores. Actually, my little sister, she started her own software company maybe 7 years ago, and it was one where she had just this like really, really basic idea. She was a school psychologist and she was like, hey, you guys at like AT&T automate like a lot of this stuff. Can we take a look at what I'm doing? I feel like this like form stuff could be automated. And I looked at it and it was like, oh yeah, this is very easy to automate. Here, when we worked together, built like some basic macros in Excel and stuff like that. And then she was like, I think this can be a product. And I was like, Jenna, we build this in like a day. There's no way is anybody gonna pay real money for this. This is ridiculous. And she kinda kept that belief. I was very wrong, and, she ended up building a business around it, that ended up being
Wow.
successful, and, she kinda bootstrapped it. It's not enormous, but it's, definitely one where she was able to jump to that full time and run successfully, and, I looking at that was somewhat aspirational for me of just like, okay, if this
Mm.
silly little product that my sister, who's not a coder at all, was able to build and put together could be successful, we should certainly be able to make an impact in this really big space in legal.
I love that. Just little thingies that you spot in the environments where you work at. They literally can translate into million or multi-million TAMs, or even multi-billion TAMs later down the road if you spot them early enough, right? And I guess this gave you a little boost of confidence to start something on your own. Was this like your first true venture, or did you build like other startups that you exited before?
I've had a couple other entrepreneurial experiences. One was right after law school, maybe a year, maybe 2 years later. I had started a startup called Instant that was
Okay.
similar to kind of like a TaskRabbit, but like Uber for home services. And
All right.
I actually thought we had a very good idea. I've actually seen a couple of recent startups that are pretty similar to this. And
Nice.
thought we had solved some routing issues and things like that, that would be pretty effective. And we built an app around it. And then I was just too scared to launch it. It was just
Really? Oh,
I wasn't
wow.
willing to pull the trigger. And I had a comfortable job. Who knows what would have happened? It was a double-sided market issue, and it would have been challenging to pull off, but had a lot of upside. I did that, and then I had semi recently started doing investing in real estate with a group of like friends and extended like family and stuff, and that ended up doing really well, and that helped us to where when we started Callidus, we had a lot of people that trusted and believed in kind of our ability to execute and we're early investors in our company.
And can you tell the viewers that don't know what the name means? Like, what's the origin of Callus?
Yeah, it's Latin, so a lot of law is has Latin roots, and so we like that kind of the call back to something kind of ancient while also pushing for something very modern. We like that juxtaposition. And Callidus means like all know or like wise, knowledgeable, intelligent, things like that. So we try to personify it as like a kind of an
Nice.
oracle to answer your questions.
No, this is a great spin on ancient concepts brought into the AI age that we're in now. So this is perfect, actually. And can you tell, in very basic layman terms, like what does your startup do? How does it help? What's the biggest challenges that you guys solve for law firms?
Yeah, we aim to be the AI operating system for litigators. So as far as like what does that mean? So think about it. If you're on there's two sides to law. There's the litigation side and the transactional side. There's maybe a couple others, arguably like policy. But on the litigation side, it's all about like going to court or kind of solving a dispute or working out a dispute between parties. The transactional side tends to be more like contract based, forming deals and so forth. On the litigation side, one of the first things that we went after was solving legal or helping solve legal research and drafting. And we help attorneys go through the legal research process much more efficiently than they do today, and then help them do their first drafts of any kind of litigation documents. That's a big solve. We'll help with everything really from initial intake all the way through trial for litigators. But that's our kind of sweet spot is building that foundation in a really strong legal research and drafting.
And I guess it's hard in legal tech to kind of differentiate yourself with other startups that pop up on a daily basis. What was your approach, to building yourself a moat in that super competitive scape there?
Yeah, I think we do three things really well. Data, design, like UX, and very detailed engineering. So, and those three complement each other really well. So the first thing we did was on the data side, you had companies like Westlaw and Lexis. These are really impressive, huge companies, like 50 billion or so in valuation. And a large part of why they're so valuable is they've had the lawyers spend decades building out a data ecosystem where they've basically taken all of the US case law, and so you have like 11 million cases, and had lawyers over like 30 years say like, what are the holdings for the case? What are the questions presented? What were the legal issues and so forth? And then kind of build out like a view for each of the cases. What we did is we said, AI is getting good enough to where we feel confident we can have very accurate, very well reasoned views on every case, as long as we have sophisticated engineering to go through and pull in like who were the parties involved, what was the holding of the case and so forth. So we built out an agent system to do that across all 11 million US cases. So every case
Wow.
that's precedential. And it was a really interesting series of problems to solve where we try to pull in like 15 to 20 kind of columns on each case, like the real important insights on the case. And then we use our RAG architecture to bring in for each case, or whenever a user asks a question, to bring in the most relevant cases. So that helps us from a data side. We do other stuff data-wise, but that's a big one. On the UX side, where we differentiate from a lot of groups is we do have a chatbot, but most of our solutions are non-chatbots. And so think more like TurboTax and less like ChatGPT. We try not to just be like a ChatGPT wrapper or like we call a few different models and just give you an answer. We try to be more like, hey, here's the 15 steps you have to go through as an attorney to solve this problem. And we're going to mirror your current workflows, but we're going to have AI synthesize all the large amounts of data and reason really well over that data to then surface that to the lawyer, keep the lawyer in the loop, make it super interactive and super visual, and then get to where the lawyer is guiding the AI across those steps to reach a really good decision on really big tasks. And so what we try to go through like 20 or so of the biggest tasks lawyers faced, picked off the top 10 that we thought AI solved really well, made them really kind of wide in their kind of the way we're looking at solving them to where it's not just like a handful of very one-off tasks, but we solve like pretty wide tasks that can solve a lot of one-offs and then build that. And then because we're quite wide or because we have these multi-step uh, solves to these problems, we have the opportunity to layer in a ton of engineering. So for example, think on the chatbot side, the user can go any way of 1,000 directions with the question. and kind of setting up the right agent system to figure out the type of question and then get to an exact answer, that gets pretty hard to do well. It is a pretty weird user experience if you just leave for like 20 minutes and then you get something that's like not quite there, then they have to iterate. It's just not a very good experience. Well, where we try to go is we've broken out the steps, and then we know the types of answers we need to get to. So we can do tons of prompt engineering. We can do chains of thought. We can do RAG systems. We can do agent frameworks, all that kind of stuff. We can eliminate hallucinations through different approaches, and then ultimately surface really interesting results to the user. And then because it's like a 15-step process, if you were to give AI this process, a decent amount of time, it would just mess up on one of the steps, right? The consistency is kind of a problem. So we try to make it to where the lawyer's in the loop, and they're going to catch those 1 out of 15 times when the AI might mess up a bit and guide it to the right answer. So that kind of power of human plus AI really works well for our system.
And I guess that you encountered tons of challenges while trying to build that because I understand, this is more like a hand-holding type of mode where, as you said, like it's not just a wrapper where you can just ask a bunch of questions. You're literally hand-holding law firms through like complex legal proceedings and processes and all that. So, what were like the craziest walls you've been hitting, so far that you can like kind of reminisce and then think about?
Yeah, yeah, it's a bunch. You always have the trade-off of speed, accuracy, and kind of UX that you have to always kind of solve problems with those three things in mind. And in a lot of cases, what we would have to do is say, okay, we have this multi-step workflow. We know that if we can't get to a perfect answer, we have to have it to where it can be iterative, and that means it needs to be fast. Nobody wants
Right.
to wait 5 minutes for a crappy answer, right? So you get the if there's ever a point where we don't think we can be intelligent enough, we've got to figure out a way to make it quick. And that means running things in parallel, doing kind of a lot at once. Or it might mean that we kick off after step two, we kick off a process that's going to run in the background for like 3 minutes while the user is occupied doing other valuable things with the experience, and then it comes back. And so designing those systems is really challenging because you have to understand what does the lawyer need, kind of what do they know at that time in the process, what is it intuitive, is it kind of elegant, is this the most efficient way to build it, and then also like how long will this RAG process take to get to an answer, how long will the LLM take before it gets a result, how long does it need to think to get a good answer, setting up evals, that sort of thing. So kind of experimenting with those and having a decent amount of like intuition plus knowledge about each step helps a lot. And really building a collaborative workplace really helps a lot where our engineers have become quite good on the legal side. I've needed to learn quite a lot on the engineering and AI side,
I can imagine,
and all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's crazy, Justin. And did you receive like signals from the universe that, okay, you know what, law firms, they like what I'm doing? Because I remember you told me in the beginning that you had, a safe job and you kind of didn't want to quit that. Well, first you had to have the guts to just jump into the wild, the void, the dark void of founders where you never know what will actually happen, right? Like, will it succeed? Am I again wasting time on another crazy project? What was like a signal that made you actually jump?
Yeah, I would say I was a little bit careful in that we would kind of experiment. If it worked, we jumped up to the next stage. So, like early on, we found people on Discord that were really passionate about AI. That were like, "Hey, I do think I can build this for a reasonable cost." And so you have to pay a little bit out of pocket, but take that risk. That to me was a really good approach for where I was, that I could experiment and take that initial step without it being too risky. But yeah, I mean, it definitely it was one where you start off and you're doubting yourself every day, right? That it's like this stupid little product. How is this going to compete with a $50 billion company or the other 100 AI startups in legal? How are we going to be successful? And it's definitely a roller coaster ride, where you have tons of major ups and then tons of major downs. And it was one where we were kind of surprised that like developing software is hard. And a lot of groups that are very good on the legal side are a lot weaker on the software side, or vice versa. And so we've been like surprised to see that like there's plenty of openings in the space if we work well and ship well and all that, to bring value to a lot of different law firms.
And to the founders that are there, on the edge of making that crazy leap, do you feel like it's worth it looking backwards now? You've raised 10 million, and back in the days you had a cushy job that was paying really well. Like, how do you see this from your perspective right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, once you get to like having a good couple of years, yeah, it's easy to say, yeah, it's totally worth it. But I think you have to
Yeah,
think about the like EV at the time, and think about the expected value each time, and that part's tough. I would say that that I have a different perspective now than I did before. So going into it, we thought it would be way easier to raise. We thought we'd be able to like pay ourselves more early on, and that wasn't the case at all. And so like the like downside risk was more serious than I realized. At the same time, I thought it was more like, hey, we're going to kind of be throwing darts and see if we get lucky enough to get to Series A or whatever. And it was just totally a crapshoot that just be super lucky if you got there, but we didn't have that much control. Looking back at it now, I would say you have quite a lot of control. And if you get to where you really know what you're doing, you can repeat the process a lot. And as a first time founder, I probably got lucky quite a few times on pieces,
really.
and then
You feel like that?
yeah, well, then quite a bit unlucky as well on different times. But now after having the experience, I see why people back multi-time founders. That you kind of have seen what works. You understand the things you have to do, and the rinse and repeat is very possible.
And you mentioned also that you had misaligned your prediction with how easy it's going to be to raise funds. Can you tell us, like, what were your greatest challenges there? And also, how many meetings did it actually take you to finally raise the 10 mil?
Yeah, yeah. Fundraising has always been a challenge. And I'll give a little bit more info than you asked here. So initially we had looked and seen like Harvey had started a company, had started in the legal tech space. They got a $5 million check. They hadn't built anything at the time, from what we could tell, and it was two people that were kind of fairly junior in their career, really smart people. They've done really well
Yeah.
since then, and so we were like, okay, I was starting with a friend who ended up not making the jump, but we were like, okay, we have 15 years experience each, in very relevant fields. This should be something where we're good professionals. We'll easily raise that same 5 million with just an idea, and it should be pretty straightforward. And then you realize it, and you start going to like talk to people, and like you're not even like remotely close. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's not the same thing as we imagined.
yeah,
Expectation versus reality, right?
yeah. And in reality, it was very hard to fundraise. We got lucky that we had that kind of angel network from our real estate group that believed in us to give us a good start. But without that, we would not have been able to raise any funds. We wouldn't have made it.
And how did you guys like get in contact with these angels? Like, what was, the trigger moment in your life where like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and contact tons of them. Let's see what happens.
Well, that one was just a lucky circumstance for us. It
Okay.
was a little before COVID. We had wanted to diversify beyond just stocks, and we got into real
Oh,
estate a bit. And it was we had reached out to a bunch of friends that were like lawyers and doctors and other professionals who kind of had a similar mindset, and they were very interested in kind of doing the same thing. And so we started doing that, and I was kind of running it on the side, just as a side project, and it worked out really well. We had really good returns, and so they were happy to take some of the money they had earned and put it into our little business. And we had tried to make it seem as serious as possible. We had our decks, and we had kind of our vision for how what we were going to do, and we had built out a kind of POC, and so they took us seriously enough to say that they would do it. Th- th- that
you already
that
had an MVP?
Somewhere between like a POC and MVP. But basically, we
Okay.
got enough funds to build, I'd say, an MVP, and through them. And then we started working with AI Fund about 6 or 7 months later, and went through with them. And then they had given us a pre-seed check that really helped us scale from there.
Wow. That's an amazing, leap from literally 0 to 1, right? A lot of founders don't even get there. Like you said yourself that in one of these startups that you've built, like for Airbnbs, you didn't necessarily take the first step, right? So what changed in your mind where you're like, okay, no, for this instance, I'm going to go ahead and do that?
I would say it was, I had wanted to do a startup for a while, like, ever since that home services startup that I had. I've been thinking about it every year and just wanted to have a good idea that I believed in, that I thought that we could execute on, and I was so passionate about AI. We had launched that product internally at DirecTV. I was leading the engineers to doing building it, and so to me, it was like a really clear play of, okay, this is a real hole in the market. This group can really get value from a product. I know exactly how we would build it and feel confident we can find the right engineers. Let's go. And so this was the first time I felt like we had a real opportunity. Well, one more point, by the way, just to because I think it's useful for the other founders. What really helped us, we had trouble the first couple of rounds raising funds, and basically just took what we could get. The next round though, we did really well, and I think what separated it was, one, we had good growth. Like growth always helps whenever you're raising. But then two, we really spent a lot of time nailing the deck. And so like I was a consultant. I worked for a bit for McKinsey. I spent a lot of time building decks, and my initial deck for this latest round was, I thought, quite good. And then I worked with somebody and kind of really try to bring it go from like 10 to 100, and it was so much better. The story was so much better. It was just much more compelling, and the delta in results because of that was enormous. And so the company
Wow.
itself is no better with the deck, with versus without the deck, but like our reception to VCs was enormously better. And so I really do think it's worth really, really doubling down on building that amazing deck, amazing story, and having that whole approach down really, really well.
Dropping gold right there on the audience. And I think a lot of founders struggle with that. Like, how important an importance pie chart would you, allocate? Like, how many percentages would you allocate to having like an amazing pitch deck, like approximately, out of all of the other, variables that influence the decisions of investors at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put an exact number, but I'd say like 25 to 35%.
Okay.
It is probably realistic that your, I mean, your growth, your results, your unit economics, they really care about that, obviously. So
Yeah.
you can't, even if you have an amazing pitch deck with horrible results, you're probably not going to get a whole lot there. And then for us, the product really stood out. The groups that we did best with were the ones that could see the product in action and say, okay, I see why this is so powerful. Some of those were groups that got in before the growth totally took off. And then others that weren't able to kind of make that connection, that later on they saw the growth, but they were too late to get in the round because it was pretty locked up. The best VCs can really see like, okay, I understand the pain point you're solving. I understand why this is incredible as far as a way to solve that, and why, and I know that this is going to take off, and you get a better, you can kind of can get in earlier with the company that way. Definitely the groups we ended up working with were groups that had that aha moment. And even actually the group we worked with, Servin, they had that aha moment before and kind of explained it better than I could. And so I remember pitching to
Okay.
them and going through everything. And he was like, okay, you said a lot of stuff before, but what I'm seeing as far as your moat is this, and this. That's really cool. And then I just told every other VC that exact thing.
The same thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then that worked really
That's
well.
so smart.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. And do you remember how many no's did you have to battle through approximately to just finally get that funding wired?
I think every time we tried to focus to hit 50 to 60 VCs that were in kind of able to make an investment with us. So they were B2B SaaS or similar types of companies, or focused, and they were the right series or right round size. They were funding, they could lead, that sort of thing. 50 to 60 was a pretty good number for us each time. And on the the most recent raise, what we probably could have done fewer than that. But it always helps to have like that confidence and that market validation and be able to say, hey, these three groups are already in. We've got just a little bit left. Do you want in? If not, I'm going somewhere else. You got 2 days.
Okay. And in total, like out of the 50, I guess you get a few batches of them. Probably what you get like 3 batches to finally close that 10 mil.
For us, it was really we probably undervalue the company a little bit.
Really? Okay.
With it, the first couple of times I was raising were pretty challenging, and so we were like, just we'll take what we can get, kind of mentality. But while still also looking at the market and trying to get a sense of the market comps. And we priced where we were, but then we doubled during the time we were fundraising. We grew 100% in Q2. We started fundraising like in the beginning of Q2, and we got term sheets like in the middle. And as soon as we got the first term sheet, everybody else wanted in, and it also helped a lot
Oh
to
my
be in
God,
person.
that's crazy. So it's this bandwagon, fear of missing out type of mentality. Interesting. All right. And once you did close that round, first of all, I want to go back to those days where you actually celebrated probably. Like, how was the day when you received the funds?
The day you actually have the funds hit your bank account is the day that it feels really good. But before that, you're nervous and you're like, "Is this going to fall apart?" And then if it does fall apart, like every other investor is like, "Why did that term sheet not go through? What happened?" And I asked a couple of investors kind of candidly, like, "Hey, if this group walked away, like, how much trouble are we in?" And their answer is, "You're in a lot of trouble." So
Really? Oh my God. Can you share a little bit more insight on that? This is really, behind the curtain type of thing that a lot of startups don't even hear about. Like, tell us a little bit more.
yeah, well, I
What
mean,
did they
just
mean? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just think about like if you're a company and a group before diligence says they're going to pay this much for your company, and then they go through diligence and then they don't strike a deal. Either like A, you're like an unreasonable person to work with and had like a bunch of weird demands to make it challenging to work with you, or B, like something is problematic in your company and they found it during diligence. And like VCs very much want to close their term sheets. Like that's something they really care about. And it looks bad on them when
Hmm.
they don't as well. And so if you have to go through that process and then say, hey, this respected VC uh, gave us a term sheet. We told everybody else, no, we're not moving forward with you. And now you're coming back. There was probably a big problem in
Yeah.
diligence. Maybe you like misstated your ARR or you had like a big litigation issue or something like that. And so the
Oh,
feedback
I
I got from
see.
a couple of
Yeah.
groups was, maybe you really want to close those deals and make sure that nothing comes up on the diligence side and all that stuff.
Did you feel like almost pressure to close? Like, would you describe it that way or not really?
A little bit. I mean, you just we were excited, but we loved the group that we were working with. We were really excited to get going on the next phase. But definitely, we felt like if it didn't go through, it was we would survive, but it would be a lot more nerve wracking.
Right, right. And do you have like any anecdotes to share with the audience, like of what happened during those crazy intense meetings that you have, like with with investors and VCs when you're closing these type of numbers?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of them were exciting. You're telling your story. You're getting really good questions from very smart people. I really respect a lot of the VCs that we talked with, and a pretty high percentage of them are extremely intelligent or full of extremely intelligent people and have very insightful questions. You get some weird ones too, but definitely a lot of really insightful questions where you've got to make the case for your company. And definitely the one with Servin that we ended up closing, like it was like like we could all feel like the momentum building in the room. Just like, here's all the things we can do. Here's what we've built. They're getting it. I'm getting their feedback. They're telling us about like the ways they can add value. It's really clear they're like aligned to our mission and they're going to be great partners. So for us, the meetings that we ended up moving forward with the VC afterward, those were mostly pretty exciting meetings with people you really like.
Yeah, and do you remember like a single use metric that signaled product market fit back in the days when you were still kind of raising, or you were raising without any revenue and clients? Like, how did that go?
Yeah. So really early on, we had raised with no revenue at all for the angel round,
Nice.
and but I mean we had a product. It was a pretty low valuation. It was people that trusted
Mm.
us, and it was nobody had any revenue at that stage in legal tech. That the AI was just too new, and definitely people took out a little bit of a waiver of, hey, we're gonna give these guys some money and hope that something works out. For the AI fund round, we had customers, but we had initially no revenue, but then we had revenue after a few months. So that was our pre-seed check for a
Ah,
million. But before they actually cut the check, we did have revenue. I think about 10K MRR. Um,
you
and
see, this is very motivating for a lot of founders right there, what you just said. Some founders, they wait to get like to 50K MRR to start, to start raising. Maybe for like different reasons. Maybe it's for a bigger valuation or something. But do you feel like you raised at the right time?
I think we did. Some of it was out of circumstance. We would have run out of money, so we kind of needed to.
Yeah,
The
I'm curious here, Justin. So you're hitting something extremely personal. So these moments where a founder almost runs out of funding and runway, a lot of founders listening in are probably in the same boat. So uh, what would be your story behind maybe the suffering that you went through mentally? Like, how did you get through it, where you knew that there was like this wall coming up and you're like, crap, I need to go like 10x creative to get this thing through, right? Like, what's your approach there?
Yeah, definitely. I generally am a very unstressed person, but after you've taken a bunch of money from your friends and extended family, and then you know that you're about to lose it, that sucks. So that part
Yeah.
drove a lot of motivation. Where it was like, I for a lot of periods I was like, I'm pretty sure we're going to fail. We don't have things aren't
Wow.
clicking. We haven't grown
Really?
enough. Whatever. And then you're like, what do I need to do to make it work? And to me, the way to think about it is like, it just doesn't help you to like think about why you're going to fail or anything like that. What helps you is
Hmm.
make the list of things you need to do that day and start knocking out that to-do list, and start and be mindful about like what actually matters, and then just go in and
Yeah.
execute and do it. And for us, it was just have a ton of meetings, make the deck better, make the products kind of shape up a little bit stronger, be able to kind of perfect your pitch, that sort of thing, really helped a lot. And yeah, for us, the first couple of rounds we were raising out of necessity. The third round we raised because we hit a metric that we wanted to hit 1 million ARR, and what we did, and we were growing really quickly after that.
Oh,
The unit economics
congrats,
get better.
Justin.
Thanks.
Uh, just, yeah, I think it's important to say congrats because a lot of founders never hit that milestone. Like literally 95+% of them go belly up before they hit 1 million in ARR. So huge congrats in such a condensed space such as legal tech. Like that's quite an achievement to unlock.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun to get there. The team was excited, and then the million was really hard. Then we grew to 2 million really fast. So that made the fundraise a lot easier. But
Okay, okay. So again, this is crazy what you're saying. Like absolutely crazy. So you're saying the first million is the hardest part, and then it becomes exponentially easier to get to the 2 mil. I guess you got, the patterns that work, the SOPs that made sense to scale. Um, could you just break down, in the simplest way possible, like, if you were to help out fellow founders listening in that are struggling to hit, 50K, 30K, 10K, how do you get to these initial steps in this ladder to 10 mil?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, to a million.
I mean, it differs by circumstance, I'm sure, and we took a pretty different approach than most. I probably would not do the approach we took exactly, if I were to do it again. That this is one of my learnings, but I mean, I think it's, I think the kind of standard wisdom is pretty right on this one. So, um, figure out something that is enough of a pain point that people will pay for it, that the market's not already solving, and build a really, really good solution for that, and find a motion that works. And I think for us, it was a lot of experimentation before we found that motion that worked, and found that ICP that really worked. and then just really double down on that motion of that ICP. And a lot of it is like perfect what you're solving before you go in and try to solve something tangential. It's a lot better to do one thing really, really well than to do 10 things not very well. That just doesn't really help.
This is so important. Again, like a gold bomb right there. To focus not on a problem, but to focus on making, making that problem solvable 10x, and making sure that you're on it and no one solves it as best as you. Is that what you?
I think that's
Right.
all
So
definitely very right. Absolutely. And I mean, you obviously have to make sure that the economics kind of make some sense for at least longer term.
yeah.
You don't need to make it to where you're profitable from day one by any means, but you've got to make sure that people are going to be willing to pay for the problem that you're solving.
And when you're saying that, I'm sure that there are rookie founders listening in that are like, okay, but what do they mean? What you probably mean is the cost per acquisition for a client needs to be outweighed by the actual profit that they bring in or the contracts that they bring in. So if it costs you like, 1,000 to acquire a demo and it takes you 6 demos to close, then it's 6K to close one client. So if you want to have like the right metrics on board, you need to sell 60K contracts to be 10x profitable, right? Like literally, this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I would say you need to make sure that you have a path to get to that point to where you have those good unit economics fairly soon, and that maybe not from day one, but eventually. But also that you have to just make sure like, are people willing to pay reasonable amounts of money for the solve? And so like maybe it's like initially your unit
Yeah.
economics aren't great, but people are willing to pay, and you can improve your way of acquiring customers over time, and you have pretty good insight into how into where you can eventually turn it into positive unit economics. But
Another
yeah,
gold bomb. Another gold bomb. This is crazy stuff. You're just dropping gold bombs nonstop here. um, what you just said is amazing. You can literally, for example, get them on a plan like for $50. Just get their credit card, make them pay, and then eventually work with them, gain trust, see what other types of services in parallel you can kind of solve in your own niche. And then with the larger tickets, just try to solve a bigger problem that they might have. So, like, first get a door in the floor, I guess.
yeah, I think that's definitely right. And I mean, I do think the lean startup approach is kind of the right one. We went the very wrong path, which has worked out for us, but like we had a lot of times we probably could have failed if we didn't get lucky. Like our viewpoint early on was like lawyers do a lot of different things, and nobody wants to like
Yeah.
load an app that only solves one of 100 things they do every day. And so we're going to solve kind of a mix of things that one ICP does regularly. And that's really hard because like every one of our solutions was like pretty close, but not quite there for a while. And
Wow.
it made it to where it's like, where we're like, this thing's really good or really almost good. And this thing's almost really good. And this thing's almost really good. And we solve everything. But then like people would look at it and be like, just give me like that one thing you solve really well. Just show me that. And we're like, it's kind of this, and so we had to get to where that we're like, okay, no, we're doubling down on this legal research piece. We're going to do it better than anybody else in the world. We're going to make it really, really powerful. And until we get that, it doesn't matter what else we're doing. And once we pick that focus and really pushed on that, it really makes a big difference. But I think that you have to have something like that. That you have as that kind of wedge with a customer, and it doesn't need to be something that is long term going to be the only thing you offer. You might offer something that's longer term more valuable, but you need to get that foot in the door first.
Exactly. I said earlier a door in the floor. I meant a foot in the door. Definitely. Yeah. So I'm also curious, like, what are the top three most brutal mistakes that you've made so far that you'd like to share with the audiences?
It's tough. A lot of things where I look at us and we're like, well, we shouldn't be set up like this. It was like a thing of circumstance where, like early on, it's like you're making deals with people that you think are good resources that can help, but those people that can be good resources, like they have good jobs and they have steady income, and they don't want to join something that's going to fail in a few months. So you end up giving them a really good deal that you regret, right?
Justin, real quick, when you're saying a bit, a good deal, we're talking about equity and salary, or we're talking about a huge salary only?
I'm thinking more in terms of like that you made a contract with someone where the terms like were like very beneficial to them or something, as an example.
Ah, got it, got it. Yeah, I think a lot of founders get locked into these terms, and it can be literally a killer for their startups, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And so we've had a couple like that where it was like, oh wow, I wish I didn't agree to that, and I
Really? Okay.
probably could have like could have negotiated more in a couple instances to where like early on you're just like, yeah, this stuff like who knows if we'll succeed? We'll deal with that if we have success. So let's not even worry about it. Let's just go. In retrospect, I probably wish that we had been a little bit more diligent on some of those things that we probably could have pushed on. The other one would be like with your co-founder, take the time to really figure out like all the like if this happens, then this, if this happens, then
Hmm,
that, and align expectations. I started with a close friend of mine, and we probably were unfair to each other where like neither one of us had
really?
thought through all of the different scenarios that could play out and how we would deal with them. And like it gets to where it's like it's friction heavy, and you're just like, and you have these situations where you might see things a little bit differently, and it just becomes challenging. So take some time up front to figure out those perspectives.
Yeah, you can literally lose a longtime friend or even a family member if you don't, kind of gauge it in the beginning, if you don't plan it enough. Like before embarking on a boat or even a marriage is how you would almost describe that. Because like you're in there for like 10 years plus maybe. So you really need to be sure that, okay, we understand each other and there's not going to be any like huge divergences down our path, right? Like any suggestions there? Like, maybe like a contract or maybe just, talking to each other a lot, open communications, like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky, by the way, that my initial co-founder, he's still a good friend. He's a great person, and still very much in our corner. But we definitely had parts where we saw things very differently for a while. And I would say we probably should have just opened like a Word doc or something and just said, hey, here's the like 30 things we need to think through in kind of a structured way. And here's my expectations. Here's your expectations. If this type of thing happens, this is kind of what we're going to do. These are areas where there might be some gray area where here's how we'll handle it. Just kind of come up with that framework for what makes sense for all of you involved, whether it's two or three or whatever, and how that will play out. It always gets tough where like usually one person will believe it more, and take like that a little bit extra risk and kind of feel more entitled to like more of the upside. And then one person will like kind of be a little bit more like, okay, I don't know. I've got a family. This seems like it's not going anywhere.
It
And
happens a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. This is crazy. Like what you're describing, it's a pattern in the unknown world of founders, because not a lot of people understand what we go through, and what we sacrifice actually as founders, which is quite intense. Like we literally can sacrifice our whole lives in social circles, to run these types of companies. Yeah. And what would be the third thing that you would say was a brutal mistake?
yeah, I mean, for us, it was kind of that piece I mentioned before, just going too wide too fast. As what we positioned it very cleverly of we're testing the market and we're going to get the market feedback on all of these different things before we really double down. But like then you've got these things that are like pretty cool and close to working and all that, and then it's like well, we think the market feedback's not good, but it's because we're not quite there. Then you kind of keep things going longer than they should. Just like kill stuff, pick the stuff that works, double down on it really fast, and really narrow your product. I think is really important.
Absolutely, Justin. And out of respect of your time, I know you have to go. So what I wanted to ask you as my last question, if you could whisper to yourself one thing at day one of starting your business, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be early on. Take it very seriously. That like right, when you are 2 years into it, you know you're successful, or you have a good chance to be successful. But early on, you're like, this is like a lottery ticket. So like, who cares to take the time to make this really thorough deal with my co-founder and to really do a lot of diligence before bringing people on and all that. And I think you have to like just start by assuming you're going to be successful, and start by assuming that you're going to need to do the diligence up front and bring on the right people and kind of negotiate effectively and all that. I'd say that would have been just assuming success would have been the right starting point.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing so much gold on this episode. And if investors or clients want to reach out, like, what's the best way?
Yeah, just shoot me an email, justin@callidusai.com. Find me on LinkedIn, either one. But thanks a lot for the time. It was really interesting to go through this very thorough and good questions.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you being here. So to everyone that checked out this episode, thank you so much for being here. Of course, if you liked it, of course, and subscribe to our channel at Phoenix. All right. See you in the next one. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.